The shuttle landed with a soft hiss on the metal platform of Station Horizon 7. Jake Thompson grabbed his single bag and stepped out into the cold air of the docking bay. He was 23 years old, average height, with brown hair cut short and a face that nobody would remember in a crowd. He looked around at the massive station that would be his home for the next year. The Galactic Alliance Academy, the most elite military training program in the known universe. Jake was the 8th human to ever attempt the program. The first 7 had all failed. Some lasted 2 weeks. Some lasted 2 days. One had quit after 6 hours. The galaxy had decided that humans were too weak, too slow, and too fragile for real military service. They were a young species from a small planet, and they had nothing special to offer. Jake planned to change that opinion. A tall insectoid creature approached him. It stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and huge compound eyes that reflected the station lights like black mirrors. Its exoskeleton was dark green and covered in small scars from countless battles. This was drill instructor Velik, a Krethian, and he had been breaking recruits for 40 years. "You are the human," Velik said. His voice was like 2 rocks grinding together. "Yes, sir," Jake replied. "I have trained 7 of your kind. All of them failed. All of them begged to go home. You will be no different." Jake just smiled. "Maybe, but I'd like to try anyway." Velik made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been disgust. He turned and walked away, expecting Jake to follow. Jake did. The barracks were a long room filled with sleeping pods stacked 3 high. Aliens of all shapes and sizes were unpacking their belongings and studying each other with careful eyes. Jake felt their attention shift to him as he entered. He heard whispers in languages he did not understand, but he could guess what they were saying. "The human is here. The weak one. The one who will fail." Velik pointed to the lowest pod in the corner, the worst spot in the room, next to the waste recycling unit. "Your bunk, human. Try not to embarrass yourself too quickly." Jake nodded and walked to his assigned spot. He set down his bag and looked around at his new squadmates. There were 5 of them, and they would train together, eat together, and either succeed together or fail together. The first was a female Veluxian named Rin. She was covered in short, silver fur and had the body of a runner, all lean muscle and long limbs. Her species was famous for being the fastest in the galaxy. She could outrun ground vehicles over short distances. She looked at Jake with golden eyes that held no warmth. The second was a massive male Gorath named Torvak. His skin looked like gray stone, and he stood over 7 feet tall with shoulders as wide as a door. The Gorath were known for strength. They could tear metal with their bare hands. Torvak glanced at Jake and then looked away, clearly unimpressed. The third was a female Ethon named Mayra. She was beautiful in a strange way, with skin that was almost transparent and glowed with soft blue light from within. The Ethon were energy beings who had evolved physical forms. They could manipulate light and heat, but their bodies were fragile. She gave Jake a small nod, which was more kindness than anyone else had shown. The fourth was a male Silith named Drell. He had the upper body of a humanoid, but from the waist down he was serpentine, with a long tail that coiled beneath him. His scales were dark red, and his eyes were yellow with slit pupils. The Silith were known for flexibility and cunning. He watched Jake with an expression that was impossible to read. These 4 aliens looked at Jake and saw nothing impressive. He was smaller than Torvak, slower than Rin, more solid than Myra, and less flexible than Drell. He had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no obvious strengths. He was just a human. A soft pink sweating mammal from a small blue planet that the galaxy had mostly ignored. Jake did not mind. He was used to being underestimated. The first meal was served in a large, cafeteria where hundreds of cadets sat at long metal tables. Jake took his tray and found a spot with his squad. The food was designed to be edible for most carbon-based life forms, which meant it tasted like nothing and had the texture of wet cardboard. Jake ate it without complaint. "Why are you here?" Rin asked suddenly. Her voice was sharp and quick, like everything else about her. "Same reason as everyone else," Jake said. "To become an Alliance soldier." "Humans cannot become Alliance soldiers. Your species has failed every time. 7 people failed. That does not mean all humans will fail." Torvik made a rumbling sound deep in his stone chest. 7 is enough to establish a pattern. You are wasting everyone's time. "Maybe," Jake said. He took another bite of the tasteless food. "But I am here now, so we might as well see what happens." Drell's forked tongue flickered out, tasting the air. "You do not seem afraid, human. That is either courage or stupidity. I have not decided which." "Could be both," Jake said with a small smile. Myra spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft, like wind chimes. "The training here is designed to break cadets. Each species is pushed to 90% of their physical limits. The Academy has 200 years of data on every known species. They know exactly how hard to push. And humans break fast," Rin added. "Your bodies are inefficient. You overheat. You require too much water. Your bones are fragile and your muscles fatigue quickly." Jake nodded. "That is all true. Then how do you expect to survive?" Jake finished his meal and pushed the tray aside. He looked at each of his squad mates in turn. The fast one, the strong one, the fragile one, the flexible one. They were all specialists, evolved over millions of years to be excellent at one thing. Humans were different. They were not excellent at anything, but they were good enough at everything. And they had one advantage that no other species in the galaxy seemed to have. They simply did not know how to quit. "I expect to survive," Jake said slowly, "because that is what humans do. We survive. It is the only thing we have ever been good at." Velik's voice boomed across the cafeteria. "All cadets report to Training Bay 1 in 10 minutes. Your suffering begins now." Jake stood up with the others. His heart was beating faster, but his hands were steady. 7 humans had failed this program. 7 humans had given up and gone home. But Jake Thompson had made a promise to himself before he left Earth. He would not be the 8th. He would be the first to succeed. And as he walked toward Training Bay 1 with aliens who doubted him on every side, Jake felt something that surprised even himself. He was not scared. He was excited. The first 3 days of training were designed to find weaknesses. The Academy's computer system had data on every species in the Alliance. It knew exactly how hard to push each cadet. It knew when muscles would fail, when lungs would give out, when minds would break. The system was perfect. It had never been wrong in 200 years. On the 3rd day, it encountered something it did not understand. The exercise was simple. Run through the variable gravity chambers until you could not run anymore. The chambers shifted between half gravity and triple gravity at random intervals. It destroyed the rhythm of running and forced the body to constantly adjust. Most species lasted between 2 and 4 hours before collapsing. Rin, the Veluxian, was built for speed. Her muscles were designed for explosive movement, for chasing prey across open ground. She was the fastest runner in the squad by far. But speed was not the same as endurance. Her fast-twitch muscle fibers burned through energy like fire through paper. At hour 6, she collapsed face-first onto the track and did not get up. Medical drones carried her away. Torvik, the Gorath, was built for strength. His stone-like body could lift weights that would crush other species. But that massive body required massive amounts of oxygen, and his lungs could not keep up with the demand of sustained running. At hour 4, he fell to his knees, gasping for air that would not come. The medical drones took him to Myra. The Ethon was built for energy manipulation. She could create light and heat from her own body. But that ability came from internal reserves that depleted quickly during physical stress. At hour 2, her glow faded to almost nothing, and she collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Drell, the Silith, lasted until hour 5. His serpentine body was efficient at movement, but even he eventually slowed and stopped. His cold blood unable to sustain the effort. Jake Thompson finished at hour 8. Then he jogged over to drill Instructor Velik and asked if he could keep going. Velik stared at him with compound eyes that showed no emotion. The Krethian had seen thousands of cadets over his long career. He had seen every species in the Alliance pushed to their limits. But he had never seen this. The monitoring system was confused. Jake's heart rate was elevated but stable. His muscles were producing a chemical called lactic acid that should have caused crippling pain and failure. But instead of building up in his tissues, the acid was being cleared away at a rate the system had never recorded. His body was somehow processing the byproducts of exhaustion faster than they could accumulate. "What are you?" Velik asked. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. He was breathing hard, and his legs ached, but he was standing. "Just human, sir. The system says you should have collapsed at hour 5. Hour 6 at the absolute maximum. The system does not know about humans." Velik made a note in his personal file. He would need to speak with the Academy physicians about this. Day 5 brought the thermal pits. Underground chambers heated to extreme temperatures, where cadets had to complete obstacle courses while their bodies fought against the heat. The Goroth loved this exercise. Their stone skin was naturally resistant to temperature extremes. Torvak completed the first course with ease, his body barely registering the heat that would have killed a human in minutes. But even Torvak had limits. At 140 degrees, after 90 minutes of continuous activity, his body began to overheat. The stone skin that protected him from the outside also trapped heat on the inside. He could not cool down. His movements became slow and clumsy, and finally he stopped, unable to continue. The Veluxians and Ethons lasted less than 30 minutes. Their bodies were not designed for heat. Rin's fur trapped warmth against her skin, and Mira's energy reserves drained twice as fast in the hot environment. Jake walked circuits around the thermal pit for 3 hours. His body was doing something that the other species found disgusting. He was sweating. Liquid poured from his skin in streams, soaking his training uniform and dripping onto the hot ground where it sizzled and evaporated. The aliens watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. They had never seen anything like it. "What is wrong with your body?" Rin asked when Jake finally emerged from the pit. She was still recovering from her own attempt, drinking water and trying to cool down. "Nothing is wrong," Jake said. "This is how humans regulate temperature. We sweat. It looks like you are melting. It feels like I am melting. But it works." Torvik shook his massive head. "My people are built for extreme environments. We can survive conditions that would kill most species." But he lasted twice as long as I did. Jake sat down heavily and accepted a water container from a passing drone. He drank deeply before answering. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme temperature changes. Hot deserts, frozen mountains, humid jungles. We had to be able to survive in all of them. So our bodies learned to adapt. "But you are not adapted for heat specifically," Myra said. Her glow was slowly returning as she recovered. "Or for cold specifically. Or for any environment specifically. No, we are adapted for everything generally. We cannot survive the hottest places as well as species built for heat. We cannot survive the coldest places as well as species built for cold. But we can survive both and everything in between. Drell coiled his tail beneath him and studied Jake with those yellow serpent eyes. You said humans are persistent predators. What does that mean? Jake thought about how to explain it. On Earth, millions of years ago, humans were not the strongest or fastest predators. We could not catch prey in a sprint. We could not overpower them with strength. So we developed a different strategy. We would chase animals across the land, hour after hour, never stopping, never resting, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Then we would walk up and kill it. The other cadets were silent. You hunted by making things tired, Rin said slowly. You chased them until they could not run anymore. Yes, that is horrifying. Jake shrugged. It worked. We ate. We survived. We spread across our entire planet, from the hottest deserts to the frozen poles. Not because we were the best at anything, just because we did not stop. Velik had been listening from across the room. He approached the group with heavy footsteps that echoed on the metal floor. The other cadets fell silent and straightened their postures. Jake remained seated, too tired to move. Private Thompson, Velik said. The Academy physicians want to examine you. Am I in trouble? You are confusing the computer systems. They do not know what to make of you. Velik paused, and when he spoke again, there was something new in his voice. Something that might have been respect. Neither do I. Jake stood up slowly, his muscles protesting. He followed Velik toward the medical bay, leaving his squad mates behind. They watched him go with different eyes than before. Not with dismissal or contempt, with something closer to unease, because they were beginning to understand something important. Jake Thompson was not special among humans. He was average, ordinary, unremarkable. If an ordinary human could do what he had done, what could an exceptional human do? What could 100 humans do? 1,000? For the first time since arriving at the Academy, the aliens of Squad 7 felt something they had never expected to feel toward a human. They felt afraid. The crucible began at midnight on the first day of the second week. 40 cadets gathered in the main assembly hall, where drill instructor Velik explained the rules in his grinding stone voice. 72 hours of continuous trials. No sleep, minimal food and water. Physical challenges that would increase in difficulty as the hours passed. Mental tests designed to break concentration and willpower. 40% of all cadets failed the crucible. Some quit. Some collapsed. Some simply stopped moving and had to be carried away by medical drones. Those who survived would move on to advanced training. Those who failed would be sent home in shame. Jake Thompson stood with his squad and listened carefully. Rin was stretching her long limbs, preparing her body for what was coming. Torvik cracked his stone knuckles with sounds like breaking rocks. Myra's glow pulsed brighter with nervous energy. Drell coiled and uncoiled his tail in a pattern that suggested anxiety. Jake did nothing. He simply stood and waited. The first 12 hours were almost easy. Running, climbing, swimming through zero-gravity water tanks. Solving puzzles while instructors shouted distractions. Basic combat drills against training drones that hit hard enough to leave bruises. The cadets pushed through, running on adrenaline and determination. Nobody quit. Nobody fell. Then the exhaustion began to set in. At hour 18, a Veluxian from another squad collapsed during a climbing exercise and had to be carried away. At hour 20, 2 Ethans withdrew voluntarily, their energy reserves completely depleted. At hour 22, a massive Garth fell asleep standing up and could not be woken. By hour 24, half the remaining cadets were showing signs of severe exhaustion. Some were hallucinating, seeing things that were not there. Others were moving like automatons, their minds shut down while their bodies continued on pure instinct. Drell's cold-blooded metabolism had slowed dramatically. and he moved through the exercises like he was swimming through thick mud. Mira's glow had faded to almost nothing, and her translucent skin had become gray and dull. Jake Thompson was tired. His muscles ached in ways he had not known were possible. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. His thoughts came slowly, like they had to travel through deep water to reach his conscious mind. But he was still moving, still functioning, still coherent. And more importantly, he was still helping others. When Mira collapsed during a long march, Jake picked her up and carried her. She weighed almost nothing, her fragile body light in his arms. He carried her for 6 miles without complaint, even when his own legs screamed for rest. "Put me down," Mira whispered. "You will fail because of me." "No," Jake said simply. "We finish together or not at all." When Rin began to panic during a confined space exercise, her mind breaking under the pressure of exhaustion and claustrophobia, Jake talked her through it. He held her hand through the narrow tunnel and told her stories about Earth, about wide-open spaces and blue skies and freedom. He kept her mind focused on something other than the walls pressing in around her dot when Torvak could not catch his breath during a high-altitude simulation. Jake showed him breathing techniques that humans use to control their oxygen intake. Slow breaths in through the nose, long exhales through the mouth. Focus on the rhythm. Let the body regulate itself. Torvak followed the instructions, and his breathing stabilized. Hour after hour, Jake pushed forward and pulled others along with him. He was not the fastest or strongest cadet in the crucible, but he was the one who would not stop. He was the one who kept moving when everyone else wanted to quit. And somehow, impossibly, he was the one who still had energy to help his squad mates when they faltered at hour 48. The academy physicians pulled Jake aside for emergency medical scanning. They could not understand what they were seeing. His brain showed elevated levels of adenosine, a chemical that should have forced him into unconsciousness hours ago. Any other species with those levels would be in a coma. But Jake was awake. Tired, yes. Slow, yes. But awake and functional. "How are you doing this?" the lead physician asked. She was a Krethian like Velik, but smaller and older, with medical symbols tattooed on her exoskeleton. Jake blinked slowly, processing the question. "Doing what?" "Staying conscious. Your brain chemistry says you should be asleep. Your body is flooded with exhaustion signals. Every biological marker says you should have collapsed hours ago." Jake thought about the question. It was hard to think. Everything was hard. But he found an answer somewhere in his tired mind. "Humans evolved to function while exhausted," he said. "Our ancestors had to. They hunted for days without sleep. They fled from predators through the night. They kept watch over their families when everyone else had to rest. We learn to ignore what our bodies tell us. We learn to keep going anyway." The physician made notes on her datapad. "This should not be possible. The body has limits for a reason. Ignoring those limits causes damage." "Yes," Jake agreed. "But sometimes the alternative is worse than damage. Sometimes you have to keep going no matter what your body says. Because if you stop, you die. Or someone you care about dies." He did not wait for permission to leave. He walked back to the Crucible course, where his squad mates were struggling through another obstacle. He joined them without a word and kept moving. Hour 70. Only 12 of the original 40 cadets were still standing. Rin was barely conscious, running on pure instinct. Torvak was moving like his body weighed twice as much as normal, every step a battle against gravity. Mira was walking now, recovering enough to move under her own power, but her glow was completely gone. Drell had wrapped his tail around Jake's arm and was using the human's warmth to keep his cold. Blood flowing. Jake was a ghost of himself. His eyes were sunken and dark. His movements were mechanical. His mind had retreated to somewhere deep inside, leaving only the part that knew how to keep putting one foot in front of the other. But he was still moving, still going, still refusing to stop. Hour 72. The finish line appeared ahead, a simple metal arch with lights flashing around it. 7 cadets crossed that line. Jake Thompson was among them, but he did not stop at the arch. He turned around and walked back onto the course. "Private Thompson!" Velik shouted. "The exercise is complete. You may stop." Jake did not respond. He walked back to where Torvik had fallen, the massive Gorath lying on the ground just 100 meters from the finish. Jake grabbed Torvik's arm and pulled. The stone-skinned alien weighed 3 times what Jake did, but Jake did not care. He pulled and dragged, and somehow got Torvik moving again. Together, leaning on each other, Human and Gorath stumbled across the finish line. Then Jake collapsed. He did not wake up for 12 hours. When he opened his eyes, he was in the medical bay, surrounded by monitoring equipment and the soft glow of healing lights. Myra was sitting beside his bed, her luminescence slowly returning. "You are insane," she said softly. "You know that, right?" Jake smiled weakly. "How did the others do?" "Everyone in our squad passed. Because of you." Jake nodded and closed his eyes again. He was still tired. He thought he might be tired for the rest of his life. But they had made it. All of them. Together. "When is the next training session start?" He mumbled. Myra laughed, a sound like gentle music. "You just slept for 12 hours after 72 hours of torture, and you want to know when training starts again?" "I came here to become a soldier," Jake said. "Not to rest." Mira shook her head in wonder. She had met many species in her life. She had studied their strengths and weaknesses, their capabilities and limits. But she had never met anything like humans. She was beginning to think that nobody had. 3 weeks had passed since the Crucible, and Squad 7 had changed. The easy dismissal of the first days was gone. The casual contempt that the alien cadets had shown toward their human squad mate had disappeared completely. In its place was something more complicated. Something that looked like respect but felt like fear. They ate together in the mess hall now, all 5 of them at the same table. No one questioned Jake's place among them anymore. No one suggested that he did not belong. But there was a tension in the air, a question that hung between them like smoke, and finally, Rin could not hold it back any longer. "What are humans?" she asked. Jake looked up from his food. The same tasteless nutrition paste that everyone ate, but he had learned to ignore the lack of flavor. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what are you really? We have been watching you for weeks now. You are not faster than me. You are not stronger than Torvik. You do not have Mira's energy manipulation or Drall's flexibility. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities that we can see. But you outperform all of us. Every time. How?" The others leaned in, waiting for the answer. Even cadets from nearby tables had gone quiet, listening. Jake Thompson had become famous in the academy. The human who would not stop. The human who carried his squad mates across finish lines. The human who confused the monitoring systems and frightened the physicians. Jake set down his eating utensil and thought about how to explain. He had grown up on Earth, surrounded by humans. Everything about his species had seemed normal to him. It was only here, among aliens, that he was beginning to understand how strange humans really were. "Let me tell you about Earth," he said. The mess hall had gone completely silent. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species were listening. Earth is not a kind planet. The temperature changes constantly, from freezing cold to burning hot, sometimes in the same day. There are deserts where nothing can live and jungles so thick with life that everything is trying to eat everything else. There are mountains that touch the sky and oceans so deep that we still do not know what lives at the bottom. He paused, gathering his thoughts. There are predators on every continent. Animals with teeth and claws and venom and strength. For millions of years, humans were not at the top of the food chain. We were prey. We were food for things bigger and stronger and faster than us. We should have died out. We should have been eaten to extinction like so many other species. But you survived, Torvak said. His deep voice was soft with something that might have been wonder. We survived. Not because we were the best at anything, but because we refused to die. We learned to run for days without stopping until the things chasing us collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to survive on almost no water, almost no food, in heat that should have killed us and cold that should have frozen us. We learned to heal from wounds that would have ended any other species. We learned to keep going when our bodies told us to stop, when our minds screamed at us to give up, when every logical calculation said we had no chance. Meyer's glow pulsed brighter. But why? What drove you to keep fighting against such odds? Jake smiled, but there was no humor in it. Spite, mostly. Humans are very good at spite. When the universe tells us we cannot do something, we take it as a personal challenge. When something tries to kill us, we get angry. And angry humans do not give up. They do not surrender. They fight until they win or until there is nothing left to fight with. Drell's forked tongue flickered out, tasting the emotions in the air. You make your species sound terrifying. We are terrifying. To each other as well as to everything else. Humans have fought more wars against other humans than we can count. We have destroyed entire civilizations, burned cities to the ground, committed horrors that I do not want to describe. We are capable of great cruelty. He looked around at his squad mates, at the aliens who have become something like friends. But we are also capable of great loyalty. When a human decides that someone belongs to their group, their tribe, their family, they will do anything to protect them. They will walk through fire. They will fight impossible battles. They will give their own lives without hesitation. That is the other side of spite. It becomes love. Fierce, protective, irrational love. Rin's golden eyes were wide. On my world, we form bonds with our pack. But those bonds are practical. We cooperate because it helps us survive. Human bonds are not practical, Jake admitted. They make no logical sense. We will sacrifice ourselves for people we barely know. We will risk everything for strangers if we decide those strangers are worth protecting. It is irrational. It is inefficient. And it is the reason humans have conquered our entire planet despite being weaker and slower than almost everything else that lived there. Torvik looked down at his massive stone hands. My people are built for war. We are soldiers from birth to death. But I am beginning to think we are built for fighting war. Not for surviving it. Not for enduring it year after year until our enemies collapse. That is exactly right, Jake said. Most species are optimized for something. Speed or strength or intelligence or endurance. Humans are not optimized for anything. We are mediocre at everything. But we can do everything. We can run and fight and think and survive. Not as well as specialists, but well enough. And when specialists run out of their one advantage, they fall. Humans just keep going. The mess hall was completely quiet. Jake realized that he had the attention of everyone in the room, hundreds of aliens from across the galaxy, all staring at the unremarkable human who had somehow become the most talked about. Cadet in the academy. He decided to give them one more piece of truth. I want you all to understand something, he said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. I am not special. Not among humans. Back on Earth, I was an average soldier. Average fitness scores. Average combat ratings. Average in every way. The things I have done here, the endurance I have shown, the pain I have pushed through, That is normal for humans. Any human could do what I have done. Most could do better." The silence stretched. Jake could see the calculations happening behind alien eyes. If this average human could outperform their best, what could an exceptional human do? What could human special forces do? The ones trained specifically for extreme conditions. What could an army of humans do? Velik entered the mess hall. His compound eyes swept across the room, noting the strange quiet, the way every face was turned toward the human at the center table. He had heard what Jake said. The entire senior staff had been monitoring the human's progress, and this conversation would be reviewed carefully. "Private Thompson," Velik said, "report to the command deck. The Admiralty wants to meet you." Jake stood up slowly. His squad mates stood with him, a gesture of solidarity that would have been unthinkable 3 weeks ago. "Can they come with me?" Jake asked, nodding toward his squad. Velik hesitated. The Admiralty had requested only the human. But something had changed in the drill instructor over the past weeks. Something that looked almost like respect. "Squad 7 will accompany Private Thompson to the command deck," Velik announced. "Full dress uniforms. You have 10 minutes." As they walked to the barracks to change, Rin fell into step beside Jake. "What do you think they want?" Jake shrugged. "Either they want to study me like a lab specimen, or they want to talk about bringing more humans into the Alliance. Which would you prefer?" Jake thought about his squad mates. The fast one, the strong one, the fragile one, the flexible one. Different species with different abilities, but they had become a team. They had suffered together and survived together. They were his people now, as much as any human had ever been. "I want to finish this program," he said. "I want to become a soldier, and I want to do it with all of you." Rin nodded slowly. For the first time since Jake had met her, she smiled at him. "Then that is what we will do, together." They walked on toward whatever waited for them on the command deck. 5 cadets from 5 species. United by something stronger than biology or evolution. United by the human concept of loyalty that made no logical sense at all. The command deck of Station Horizon 7 was a massive circular room at the top of the station, with windows that looked out at the stars in every direction. 12 chairs sat in a semicircle facing a single spot in the center of the floor, and in those chairs sat the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. The Galactic Alliance Admiralty. Representatives from the 12 founding species, each one responsible for billions of lives and thousands of warships. Jake Thompson stood in that center spot, with his squad arranged behind him. He had changed into his dress uniform, a simple gray outfit with no decorations because he had earned none yet. He looked small standing before these ancient, powerful beings. Small and ordinary and utterly unremarkable. Admiral Kress spoke first. He was a Krethian like Velik, but much older. His exoskeleton faded to a pale green and covered with symbols of rank that Jake did not recognize. His compound eyes reflected the starlight from the windows. "Private Thompson, you have created quite a situation for us. I apologize if I have caused problems, Admiral. Problems." Kress made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You have not caused problems. You have caused a complete reassessment of everything we thought we knew about humans." Another admiral spoke. This one was Veluxian, with silver fur turned white with age and golden eyes that had seen centuries of war. Admiral Thiessen, according to the nameplate on her chair. "We have trained cadets from 43 species over 200 years. We have accumulated more data on physical capabilities than any other institution in the galaxy. We know, with scientific precision, exactly what each species can do. Or we thought we did." She leaned forward, studying Jake like he was a puzzle she could not solve. "You have broken 17 Academy records in 3 weeks. Endurance records. Heat resistance records. pain tolerance records, sleep deprivation records. You have done things that our system said were biologically impossible. And you claim to be average among your kind. Yes, Admiral. I'm average. The admirals exchanged glances. Jake could not read their alien expressions, but he sensed disbelief mixed with something else. Concern, maybe, or fear. Let us be direct, Cress said. The Alliance has avoided recruiting humans for military service. Your species is young. Your history is violent. Your psychology is unstable by galactic standards. You fight wars against each other with a frequency that disturbs every other species. We consider you too dangerous to include in our forces. Jake said nothing. He could not argue with any of it. But now we face a problem. Our enemies have been watching you as closely as we have. The footage of your training has been analyzed by every military power in the quadrant. They see what we see, a species that does not quit. A species that can push through limits that would break anyone else. A species that gets more dangerous when it should be collapsing. Admiral Thiessen continued, If we do not recruit humans, someone else will. The Dominion has already made overtures to your government. They are offering significant resources in exchange for human soldiers. We cannot allow that to happen. Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He had heard of the Dominion. Everyone had. A rival alliance that had been fighting the Galactic Alliance for centuries. An endless war of borders and resources and ideology. If humans join the Dominion instead of the Alliance, I understand, Jake said carefully. What do you want from me? We want to know if you are a sample of one or a sample of many. Are you a freak among humans, or are you typical? Jake thought about how to answer. He thought about the soldiers he had trained with back on Earth, about his friends who had gone into special forces, who could do things that made Jake look lazy, about the athletes who ran 100-mile races through deserts for fun, about the mountain climbers who summited peaks without oxygen, about the fighters who broke bones and kept fighting. I am not a freak, he said finally. I am ordinary. Maybe slightly above average in some areas, but nothing special. Our special forces, our elite soldiers, they would think this academy was a warm-up. They would be bored. The admirals were silent. Jake could feel the weight of their attention, the calculations happening behind their ancient eyes. Then it is decided, Cress said. I am authorizing a proposal to the Council for full integration of human forces into the Alliance military. Training programs will be established on Earth. Recruitment will begin immediately. Within a decade, we expect humans to be a significant portion of our frontline forces. Jake should have felt proud. This was why he had come to the academy. This was what he had hoped to achieve. But instead, he felt a twisting in his gut. Something was wrong. One condition, Jake said. The admirals stopped. They were not used to conditions from cadets. Speak, Cress said. Jake turned and looked at his squad mates. Rin, Torvik, Myra, they had suffered beside him. They had nearly broken a dozen times. They had been carried and supported and dragged across finish lines because they could not make it on their own. By any measure, they were not the best cadets in the academy. Not anymore, but they were his squad. My squad finishes with me, Jake said. All of them. They graduate the academy and become Alliance soldiers. None of them wash out. Admiral Thiessen frowned. You would spend political capital on aliens who could not match your performance? They matched what mattered. They did not quit. They kept going even when their bodies failed them. They are exactly the kind of soldiers the Alliance needs. This is not how the Academy works. Cadets succeed or fail based on their own merits. Jake stood a little straighter. He was tired of being diplomatic, tired of being careful. He was a human, and humans did not back down when something mattered. Then change how the Academy works. You want humans in your military? Fine. But humans do not leave people behind. We do not abandon our squad because the numbers say they are not good enough. If my squad fails, I fail. That is not a negotiation. That is a fact. The admiral stared at him. No cadet had ever spoken to them this way. No cadet had ever demanded anything. The hierarchy of the Alliance military was built on obedience and respect for authority. But Jake Thompson was human. And humans had never been very good at hierarchy. Crest turned to look at the other admirals. Something passed between them, some silent communication that Jake could not interpret. Then Crest turned back. Very well. Squad 7 will complete the training program together. If any member fails, special accommodations will be made. This is being done as a gesture of goodwill toward our future human allies. Do not make us regret it. Jake nodded. Thank you, Admiral. Do not thank us yet. You have just made yourself responsible for 4 other beings. If they fail, it will reflect on you and on humanity. The pressure has only increased. Jake looked back at his squad. Rin was standing straight, her golden eyes bright with something that might have been tears. Torvik had his stone hand over. His chest in what Jake had learned was a Goroth gesture of respect. Mira was glowing brighter than she had in weeks. Drell's tail was coiled tight with emotion. We will not fail, Jake said. Any of us. 6 months later, Squad 7 graduated at the top of their class. Not because of Jake alone, but because they had learned from each other. Rin had adopted human endurance techniques and could now run for hours instead of minutes. Torvik used human breathing methods that tripled his stamina. Myra had learned to pace her energy output and could maintain her abilities 10 times longer than before. Drell had discovered that the human concept of spite was actually trainable. That anger could be channeled into determination. And Jake Thompson became the first human to earn the rank of Alliance Centaurian, with full command authority and the respective species that had dismissed humanity just a year before. When the journalists asked what made humanity special, what their greatest strength was, Jake gave an answer that spread across the galaxy and became famous on 100 worlds. We are too stubborn to know when we are beaten, he said. And honestly, we think that is funny. The war with the Dominion would continue for many more years. There would be battles won and lost, heroes made and mourned, planets saved and destroyed. But from that day forward, humans stood at the front lines beside the other species of the Alliance. And whenever a battle seemed lost, whenever the situation seemed hopeless, whenever every logical calculation said to retreat and survive to fight another day, the humans would just smile and keep fighting, because that was what humans did. They survived, not because they were the best at anything, not because they were chosen or special or blessed by fate, simply because they refused to stop. And in the end, that was enough. That was always enough.